Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back to News Dose, and now that we got our first look at the Switch 2 hardware, the next question really is just about what's going to run on it. I mean, we know that it's going to have Mario Kart 9 or whatever they decide to call it, and it looks like it can run up to 24 players, so that's pretty cool. But an interesting rumor popped up this weekend that suggests that they may have struck a big partnership with none other than Xbox. Now, I don't know about the specific games that people are throwing around as possible candidates. We will talk about that today, but I am inclined to believe this idea because, well, we already have proof. So stick around and we're going to get into all of that, as well as the idea of yet another price hike for video games. Yeah, I don't expect fans to be all that happy about this one, but we'll get into that as well. Before we get started, though, I do want to go ahead and give a big shout out to my supporters on Patreon and on YouTube memberships. You all are absolutely amazing, and you will get this video through early access. Let's just go and get right into things, though, starting off with the Resident Evil franchise. Capcom, for the most part, has remade the most obvious entries, being Resident Evil 1 through 4, though I would argue that Resident Evil 1 needs a more drastic remake. Cross my fingers for that. But nonetheless, the question for Capcom now is just, what's next? Are they going to remake the first game? Again, cross my fingers for that eventually. Are they going to go with Code Veronica? Or are they going to continue on in sequential order and just remake Resident Evil 5? Well, an interesting ESRB rating popped up today that caused a lot of conversation online. Though from my perspective, I think some people are maybe reading a little too much into this. So what's happening here is that an ESRB rating for a Resident Evil 6 Xbox Series version was discovered online, and immediately fans started to speculate that Capcom is remaking Resident Evil 6 and that they're skipping Resident Evil 5. Now, that would be a little strange if they were to do that, but what I think is actually happening here is that they're simply printing a native Xbox Series version and most likely a PS5 version as well. Now, the reason I believe that is because they just did the same thing with Resident Evil 2 and 3. They made an updated native PS5 version and re-released them physically, which you can now buy for, I believe it's $30. I believe they even did that for Resident Evil 7 and Village as well. So I think they're going to do the same thing with Resident Evil 6, and the reason that they might be skipping Resident Evil 5 in this instance, or at least for now, is because that's more than likely what they're remaking next. Resident Evil 5 will be a remake, and Resident Evil 6 will be a re-release with a native PS5 and Xbox Series version. So that's just from my perspective. Maybe you have a different take on this, and if you do, let me know why you think an ESRB rating for the Xbox Series suddenly popped up for Resident Evil 6. Now, here's something really cool, because my favorite game from last year continues to get better and better, and of course I'm talking about Astro. Team Asobi has done an absolutely fantastic job with updates that adds more and more content. And seemingly, they just revealed yet another speedrunning level. This apparently happened at a PlayStation Tournament XP event where they just randomly played through a new level. Now, the only thing about this reveal, though, is that they didn't really add much context. I mean, I assume that this will eventually launch for everybody, but for right now, it's unclear as to when and whether or not this will be a part of a bigger expansion that has even more levels. Now, personally, because I really like Astrobot, I'm hoping that it'll be a bigger expansion that adds even more trophies and just different bots to unlock. I think that'd be pretty cool, and by all means, this is one game that, honestly, I wouldn't mind supporting if they decide to add a big, even paid expansion. Either which way, though, it definitely looks like Astrobot fans have more to look forward to in 2025. Now, speaking of fans that are looking forward to something in 2025, I mean, we might as well just go and talk about Hollow Knight Silksong, because, I mean, Hollow Knight fans have been craving something for, it's been a long time. So, what I can say here, though, is that it's starting to sound like this will finally be the year for you Hollow Knight fans. Last week, we talked about the creator seemingly teasing a reveal at the Switch 2 Direct, which will take place on April 2nd, and now we have a little more information from Team Cherry's Matthew Griffin, who works in marketing and publishing. He took to Twitter and responded to a fan asking about his progress, and he simply said, "Yes, the game is real, progressing, and will release," with a heart. Now, it's actually kind of crazy that this simple response, very simple response, was enough to spawn like 100 different articles online. But I think that kind of goes to show you the hunger for any kind of Silksong news. It's been a long time. What I'll say here, though, is that this remark, in combination with the Switch 2 Direct tease last week, tells me that they are starting to become a little bit more open to online conversation, and that usually means a company is about ready to start ramping up for some kind of reveal. So I might regret this prediction in a future video, but I actually do believe that 2025 is the year for Hollow Knight Silksong. Okay, so actually let's go talk about the Switch 2, because the more we hear, the more it sounds like Xbox is going to be a big partner for Nintendo this generation. I know there's always going to be that back and forth about whether or not Xbox should support rival consoles. I get both sides of the argument. But Nintendo and Xbox, they've had a close relationship for a long time, and I think most Xbox fans are relatively okay with that. From what I've seen online, Xbox fans tend to get a little bit more annoyed when Xbox supports PlayStation, because PlayStation is very similar to Xbox, and they're also just a much more cutthroat competitor than Nintendo. Now, that's just from my own perspective. I'd love to hear your opinion in the comments below, but Ecstasis TV is claiming that Xbox will be a big partner for the Nintendo Switch 2. You can see here posted up on MP First, they said the list of games potentially coming to the Switch 2 includes, via Ecstasis Video, is Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024, Halo the Master Chief Collection, Diablo 4, Call of Duty, though the exact title is unknown, Fallout 4, and then Starfield. So, there's actually some big time names on this list. Obviously, Halo the Master Chief Collection would send shockwaves throughout the game community because of its iconic status on Xbox. To a lot of people, Halo is Xbox. And for it to be on any other console would be, that would be a monumental moment in video game history. Now, at the same time, though, this isn't necessarily a brand new Halo game. It's not Halo Infinite. It's not Halo 7 or anything like that. These are older games that could honestly bring millions of new gamers into the Halo fandom. And if Microsoft actually ports this collection over to Nintendo, I imagine that's probably their thought process. They're probably looking at this from the perspective that it'll be great for Halo's long-term health, and quite honestly, even though I think there will be an emotional response to Halo the Master Chief Collection on another rival console, it's kind of hard to argue against it being good for Halo's future. The Nintendo Switch was the best-selling console this generation, and I fully expect the Switch 2 to put up some crazy numbers again next generation. So that's a lot of potential customers that might not be on an Xbox console that could buy into the Halo Master Chief Collection and then be invested in future Halo games as well. If I were to guess, I would imagine that Halo the Master Chief Collection would sell incredibly well on the Nintendo Switch 2. I don't doubt that one bit. The other big surprise here, though, I would say is Starfield. And this is one of those rumors that's been swirling around pretty much even before the release of Starfield. Maybe it'll finally happen, but I don't know. I just feel like Starfield has been this punching bag for such a long time, and I almost find it strange that fans on rival consoles cheer for this port, because these same people are the ones that trashed this game endlessly before it even released. I've often said that Starfield has had some of the most bizarre discourse in gaming that I've ever seen, and even though I don't think it's necessarily this generational game that a lot of people hyped it up to be, I don't think it's this terrible game either. I think it's just a good, solid game. That's just how I look at it, but, nonetheless, I'd almost be curious to see the response for it on other consoles. If everybody just suddenly acted like they didn't criticize it to no end, I think that would kind of tell you how authentic certain people can be online. I'm just throwing that out there. But here's the thing. All of these games are simply rumors for the time being. But with that said, we do know one thing. We do 100% know that Microsoft is a Switch 2 partner. And the reason that we know that is because back in November of 2024, during a financial report, Nintendo revealed this infographic, which shows, quote-unquote, strengthening relationships with software publishers. Now, if you look at this picture here, there's a lot of expected publishers like Square Enix, Konami, there's Bandai Namco, Sega, and the list kind of goes on and on. But there's also a few unexpected parties like From Software and Microsoft. So FromSoft, they might actually release something like Elden Ring on the Switch 2. That seems plausible given how well it runs on the Steam Deck. But as for Microsoft, that's the really interesting inclusion. Now, theoretically, this could only be referring to Call of Duty because, they did sign that 10-year contract with Nintendo. But for me, I would argue that there is a little bit more to this. At the bare minimum, I'm at the very least expecting Hi-Fi Rush and Sea of Thieves for Nintendo's next console. They released it on PlayStation. I'm fully expecting them to release it on Nintendo as well. But I also wouldn't doubt that there's more games like Doom: The Dark Ages, the rumored Oblivion remake, Indiana Jones, etc., etc. These are all games I could definitely see coming over to Nintendo as long as they can run on the Switch 2. So I definitely think Microsoft is a publisher to keep an eye on because they might have a big presence at the upcoming Switch 2 Direct. Let me know what you all think about this, though. Do you think this partnership is only for Call of Duty and that 10-year contract, or do you think there's possibly more to this? Okay, now one more thing, and this topic I'd say is a little bit more frustrating. A few years ago, there was a lot of controversy with the idea that games could raise in price to $70. Obviously, gamers lost that argument as most AAA games now have raised their price. Here we are just a few short years later, though, and we're now once again hearing from a gaming analyst that the game industry is hoping's the key word here, but they're hoping that Rockstar charges $100 for Grand Theft Auto 6 so they themselves can also raise the price of their games even more. Now, the thing that kind of gets to me about this topic is that this conversation always falls back to how expensive it is to make AAA games. My response to this, though, just because I've seen the evolution of games from the 90s all the way up to where we are now, is where's the accountability from these companies? This idea that they have to spend $300+ million to develop a game and sell 5+ million copies for razor-thin profits has always and always will be unsustainable. This is not some big surprise. And there's been warnings about this for a better part of a decade. Sean Layden has been talking about this for years and years and years. So maybe, just maybe, these companies need to narrow their scope a little bit and rein in their out-of-control budgets. Maybe not every game needs to have all this high-tech technology with 30+ hours of gameplay in this massive open world that takes 6+ years to develop. I remember when we used to get multiple high-quality entries from a single franchise in a generation. Halo 3, 4, Reach, ODST, Halo 5, all released on the Xbox 360. Uncharted 1 through 3, all released on the PlayStation 3. Now, we're kind of lucky to get a single game from a studio in a generation. And some of that's because these studios aren't budgeting their games properly. They're spending 6, 7, 8 years in development. At the same time, though, despite what I think about modern AAA budgets and just how out of control they are and just how out of control the development time has become, I don't expect an imminent change for any of that. And that means that there is likely a chance that we will see another price hike. It wouldn't shock me if some AAA games moved up to $80 by next generation. Now, will GTA 6 be the first domino for that effect? That's the current mystery that we're talking about. But at the very least, it sounds like there are some people within the game industry that are hoping that it will be. Let's go take a look at the poll of the day, though, where I asked you all to predict the launch price for the Nintendo Switch 2. There's been a lot of rumors and alleged leaks this past few days, so I thought I'd just kind of ask you all, and most of you are expecting $400. Now, personally, that's my hope. I don't know if that'll turn out to be the actual price, but I think $400 would definitely be the sweet spot for Nintendo. My fear is that it will be higher. Once we start to get into the $450 range, then the Switch 2 is going to start to get a lot more comparisons with the PS5 and the Xbox Series X. So I feel like $400 is the perfect price point for them, but just kind of given the current economy, the inflation and all of that's where some of my concerns comes in. If anything else, though, I do hope you all are correct about this and that it will come in at $400. Anyways, though, that's going to be for this episode. But until next time, make sure to subscribe, ring that bell, and Peace out.